I never thought the same hands I once held to teach him how to walk would be the ones to beat me, beating me until I was bleeding on the floor of my own home. My son Andrew broke my nose with his closed fist. He screamed that I deserved to be hit for being a selfish and cheap father. What he didn't know is that behind my supposed poverty, a fortune was hidden that would change everything forever. Before we continue, subscribe and activate the notification bell. We publish new stories every day. Leave your like and tell us in the comments what city and country you are watching from. My name is Nathan Miller. I'm 64 years old, and for the last 20 years, I've lived as a widower who dedicated every dollar of his pension to raising and educating his only son. When my dear wife Helen died in 2004, Andrew was just 12 years old. I perfectly remember that gray November day. I promised her at her grave that I would do everything possible so our son would grow up to be a good man. How wrong I was. For 2 decades, I worked double shifts at the textile factory in a small city outside Chicago, all to pay for his college education. I gave up vacations, new clothes, even the necessary medications for my arthritis, all so Andrew could have a career in business administration. I sold Helen's car. I pawned her wedding ring. I even stopped going to the doctor, all to save every cent I could invest in his future. Andrew graduated in 2019 with honors. He got a decent office job downtown, and I thought I had finally fulfilled my promise to Helen. During these last few years, our relationship had been polite, but distant. He lived in his own apartment with his girlfriend, Patricia Reed, a 9-year-old nurse who worked at City General Hospital. Everything changed on a Sunday in March 2024. Andrew arrived at my modest 2-bedroom apartment in the suburbs. He had a smile I hadn't seen in years. Patricia was with him. She was wearing an engagement ring that shined brighter than all the sacrifices I had made for them. "Dad, we have incredible news," he told me as he sat on my old leather sofa, the one I had bought when he was a teenager. "Patricia and I are getting married in September. We want it to be a perfect wedding, something we'll remember for our whole lives." My heart filled with joy. After so many years of loneliness, I would finally have a complete family again. Patricia seemed like a good girl, polite and hardworking. I had heard nurses made good money, so I thought between the two of them, they could organize a beautiful ceremony. "Congratulations, son," I said, hugging them both. "Your mother would be so proud to see you settling down with such a wonderful woman." But then Andrew's expression changed. His smile became more calculating, colder. "Dad, we need to talk about something important," he said. Patricia nodded beside him. "We've been planning the wedding, and between the venue, the catering, the decorations, the photographer, and everything else, we need $20,000. My world stopped completely. $20,000. That number echoed in my head like a hammer hitting steel. At that moment, I made a decision that would change our lives forever. I decided to lie about my real financial situation, to test my son's true character. "Andrew, my son," I said, my voice trembling, faking a worry I didn't feel. "You know my pension is barely $800 a month, with house expenses, food, medicine. I don't have that kind of money." The reaction was immediate and brutal. "What do you mean you don't have money?" Andrew exploded, getting to his feet. "You've had 20 years to save. What do you spend it all on? What do you waste your pension on?" Patricia, who had been silent until then, joined the accusations. "Nathan, with all due respect, other fathers sacrifice for their children's weddings. My father already promised us $5,000, and he earns less than you. Listen to me," I tried to explain, maintaining my act. "I can help you with $5,000. If you give me a few months to get it together, I'll have to take out a loan." "But $5,000, Andrew yelled, with a fury I had never seen in him. "Patricia, did you hear that? My own father, who says he loves me more than his own life, is offering me scraps for the most important day of my existence." At that moment, seeing the boundless anger in my son's eyes, I knew I had made the right decision to test him. The person in front of me was not the boy I had raised with so much love and sacrifice. He was a stranger who saw me only as a source of money. What neither of them knew is that in my secret account at a major national bank, inherited from Helen, sat $200,000. Money I had kept hidden for 2 decades, waiting for the perfect moment to use it. That moment had arrived, but not in the way Andrew expected. The days following that conversation were a nightmare I never imagined living. Andrew started calling me 3 times a day, each conversation more aggressive than the last. His tone had changed completely. He was no longer my loving son, but a stranger who spoke to me as if I were his employee. Dad, Patricia and I have been calculating the expenses. He told me during one of those phone calls. On a Wednesday afternoon, the La Favorita Hall in the next town over costs $8,000, just for the rental. The menu for 150 guests is another $7,000. The professional photographer we want charges $2,500. The band, another $2,000. And that's not even counting the wedding dress, the flowers, the invitations. I maintained my act of a father worried about money. Son, I understand you want a beautiful celebration, but those numbers are astronomical. Couldn't you do something simpler? Your mother and I got married on $500, and we were very happy. There's the problem, Andrew snapped. You're always comparing everything to your time. Patricia deserves a princess wedding, not the poor ceremony you had with Mom. Those words hurt me more than any physical blow. Helen and I had been so happy at our simple wedding. In the small St. John's church, she looked radiant in a white dress her own mother had sewn, and I wore the only suit I owned. But we had been surrounded by genuine love, not materialistic demands. Andrew, don't talk about your mother like that, I warned him firmly. She was an extraordinary woman who valued love above appearances. Sure, that's why she died without ever knowing luxury, he replied, with a cruelty that left me breathless. Patricia isn't going to settle for crumbs like she did. I hung up the phone, trembling with rage. How did he dare speak about Helen like that? How had I raised such a monster without realizing it? That Friday, Andrew and Patricia showed up at my door unannounced. This time, Patricia took control of the conversation. Nathan, we need to talk. Seriously, she began, settling onto my sofa as if she owned the place. I've been looking into your finances, and frankly, I don't understand where your money goes each month. Looking into my finances? I asked, in disbelief. Who gave you the right to do that? Andrew told me you received a severance package when the textile factory closed, Patricia continued, ignoring my question. That was 3 years ago. Where is that money? It was true I had received a small severance of $8,000, but I had used it to repair the roof and replace the heating system. However, I decided to continue my act. That severance pay went to medical expenses and house repairs. I lied, partially, at my age. Health problems are expensive. Medical expenses, Andrew scoffed. You barely go to the doctor because you say you can't afford it. Patricia, do you see how he lies? Besides, Patricia added with a fake smile, I spoke with my boss at the hospital. She explained that seniors get a lot of tax breaks and discounts. You should have more available money than you admit. The manipulation was obvious. This woman had been calculating my supposed income like an auditor. I realized it wasn't just Andrew who had changed. Patricia was influencing him negatively, or maybe she had simply revealed her true ambitious personality. Listen, I told them, keeping my conciliatory tone. I understand your frustration. Let me do some calculations. Maybe I can get a personal loan using the house as collateral. I could get $10,000, but I would need 6 months to organize it. $10,000, Patricia screamed, standing up. That's not even half of what we need. Andrew, your father is mocking us. Patricia is right, Andrew said, his eyes bloodshot with anger. Dad, other fathers sell their cars, take out loans, mortgage their houses. They do whatever it takes for their children's happiness. Andrew, I already mortgaged this house twice to pay for your college education. I reminded him, don't you remember the sacrifices I made? The nights I worked double shifts so you could have books and school supplies? That was your obligation as a father, he yelled. I didn't ask you to bring me into this world. If you decided to have me, you had to accept the consequences. His words pierced me like daggers. 20 years of unconditional love, of silent sacrifices, of sleepless nights when he was sick, of shared joy in every one of his achievements, all reduced to an obligation. Look, Nathan, Patricia intervened, her voice calculatedly sweet. We don't want to pressure you, but my younger sister's father paid $15,000 for her wedding last year. My own father, who is an electrician and earns much less than what you must have in your pension, already promised us $5,000. How do you think I feel when I have to explain to my family that the groom's father can't even contribute half? Public humiliation. That was their strategy. Make me feel like a failure in front of strangers, as if my worth as a father was measured only by the amount of money I could hand over. Besides, Patricia continued, we already booked the date at La Favorita. If we don't confirm the full payment by April 30th, we lose the reservation and the $1,000 deposit we already paid. $1,000 deposit, I asked. Alarmed. Where did you get that money? Andrew got an advance at work, Patricia replied. But now his paycheck is being garnished for 6 months. That's why we need your help urgently. The trap was set. They had spent money they didn't have, betting that I would give in to the pressure. It was a perfectly orchestrated manipulation. Dad, Andrew pleaded, suddenly changing to a pitiful tone. You always said you would do anything for my happiness. This wedding is the most important thing that has ever happened to me. Patricia is perfect for me. Don't you want to see me happy? For a moment, my father's heart almost gave in. But then I remembered his cruel words about Helen, his shouting, his irrational demands. No, this wasn't love. It was emotional blackmail. Son, I told him with a firm voice, I will help you with $10,000, and not 1 cent more. That is my final offer. The silence that followed was deathly. Patricia and Andrew looked at each other with an expression I will never forget, absolute contempt for me. In that case, Patricia said, getting up, I think we have nothing more to talk about. They walked to the door. But before leaving, Andrew turned back to me. Dad, I hope you know that Patricia is going to tell her entire family that my father is a cheapskate, who prefers to hoard his money rather than make his only son happy. The door slammed shut with a bang that echoed through the house. I was left alone, surrounded by a silence that seemed to scream the magnitude of the betrayal I had just witnessed. That night, as I looked at the photograph of Helen on my nightstand, I whispered, My love, I think the time has come to find out what kind of man we really raised. 3 weeks passed with no news from Andrew. 3 weeks of absolute silence. It allowed me to reflect on the situation and to observe my son's true character from a distance. During that time, I kept my usual routine. The market on Tuesdays, a walk in Willow Creek Park on Thursdays, and the weekly visit to the cemetery where Helen rests. It was precisely during one of those visits, on a sunny Saturday in April, that the incident occurred that would trigger the tragedy. While I was cleaning Helen's headstone and telling her about the problems with Andrew, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Mr. Miller, how are you? I turned and saw Betty Jimenez, a 70-year-old woman who lived in my building. Betty had been a widow for 5 years and had serious financial problems. Her pension was insufficient, and her children, who lived in Barcelona, rarely helped her. Hello, Betty. Just here visiting my Helen like every week, I replied, wiping my hands on a handkerchief. Mr. Miller, I need to ask you a huge favor, she told me, her voice trembling. My granddaughter Lucy is graduating from nursing school next week. She's the first person in our family to get a college degree. I want to give her something special, but I don't have enough money. Betty was a dignified woman who never asked for help. The fact that she was coming to me meant her situation was desperate. What exactly do you need? I asked. Just $1,000. To buy her a tablet she needs for her job at the hospital. I know it's a lot of money, but I could pay you back in installments. $50 a month. I'll sign any paper you want. My heart was moved. Betty reminded me of Helen, a fighter, humble, a woman who valued education above all else. Besides, $1,000 was an insignificant amount compared to the $200,000 I had saved. Betty, you don't need to sign anything or pay me back, I told her. Tomorrow I will give you the $1,000 as a gift for your granddaughter. Consider it an investment in the future of a hard-working young woman. Tears rolled down her wrinkled cheeks. "Mr. Miller, you are an angel. I don't know how to thank you." The next day, Sunday morning, I withdrew $1,000 from my bank account and gave it to Betty. She cried with emotion and blessed me over and over. Seeing her happiness filled me with a satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. However, that same afternoon, my peace was interrupted by violent pounding on my door. When I opened it, I found Andrew and Patricia. But they weren't alone. They were accompanied by a young man about 25 years old whom I didn't recognize. "Can I know what this means?" I asked them. As the three of them entered without waiting for an invitation, "Dad, this is Kevin Reed, Patricia's younger brother," Andrew said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "He works at the bank where you have your account." My blood ran cold. They had been investigating my bank activity. "Mr. Miller," Kevin began, in a professional but threatening tone, "my sister told me about your financial situation, but it's curious that you withdrew exactly $1,000 in cash yesterday. A considerable amount for someone who claims not to have money for his son's wedding." The betrayal was complete. Not only had they violated my privacy, but they had used professional contacts to illegally spy on me. "How dare you investigate my bank accounts?" I exploded, with a rage I had held in for weeks. "That is illegal. What's illegal is lying to your own son," Patricia replied, brazenly. "We know you withdrew $1,000 yesterday. What did you use it for?" "My finances are my business," I responded firmly. "I don't have to explain to anyone how I spend my own money." "Yes, you do," Andrew roared, moving dangerously close to me. "I am your son. I have the right to know why you prefer to spend your money on other things before helping me on the most important day of my life." "Other things," I repeated, in disbelief. "You think $1,000 changes anything? You asked me for 20,000. "Every dollar counts," Patricia yelled. "You say you don't have money, but yesterday you spent $1,000 on who knows what. If you're so interested," I said, finally losing my patience. "I gave that $1,000 to Betty Jimenez, my neighbor, so she could buy a tablet for her granddaughter who is graduating as a nurse, a young woman who actually values education and effort." The silence that followed was deafening. The three of them looked at me as if I had confessed a crime. "You gave $1,000 to a stranger," Andrew whispered, in a voice I didn't recognize. "To a stranger who isn't even family." "Betty is not a stranger," I explained. "She is a dignified woman who raised 3 children alone, worked for 40 years as a seamstress, and now lives on a miserable pension while her own children have abandoned her. Her granddaughter Lucy is an exemplary young woman who— I don't give a damn about that old woman and her granddaughter." Andrew exploded, with a violence I had never seen. "You are my father. I am your blood. How can you give money to strangers when your own son is asking you for help?" "Andrew, lower your voice," I warned him. "The neighbors are going to hear." "Let them hear," he bellowed, out of his mind. "Let everyone know that my father prefers to help any stranger before his own family." Patricia and Kevin exchanged knowing glances. It was clear they had come prepared for this confrontation. "Nathan," Patricia said, her voice poisonous, "this proves that you do have money available. If you could give away $1,000 without thinking, it means you can help us with much more." "Exactly," Kevin added. "Mr. Miller, I've worked at the bank for 3 years. I know the spending patterns of clients. You have more money than you admit. Are you threatening me?" I asked, looking directly into Kevin's eyes. "We're not threatening you," Andrew replied with a cruel smile. "We're just opening your eyes. Dad, are you going to give us that $20,000? Or are you going to lose your only son forever? And if I refuse?" I asked, defiantly. "If you refuse," Andrew said, moving in until he was inches from my face, "you will never see us again. Patricia and I will move to another city. You will not meet your grandchildren. You will die alone and abandoned, like that pathetic old woman you gave my money to." "Your money?" I repeated in disbelief. "Andrew, that money was mine. I worked for it for 40 years. Your money should be mine," he shouted. "Out of control. When you die, it's all going to be mine anyway. But I need that money now. At that moment, something broke irreparably inside me. The mask had fallen completely. My son didn't see me as a father who deserved love and respect, but as an obstacle between him and an inheritance he considered his by right. I spoke to Andrew with a calm that surprised even me. "Get out of my house right now." "What did you say?" he asked, his eyes wide. "I said all three of you, get out of my house immediately," I repeated, pointing to the door. "I'm not going anywhere until you give me my money," Andrew roared. "Your money," I finally exploded. "You, ungrateful brat? I sacrificed my entire life for you. I worked myself to death to give you an education. I sold everything that had sentimental value so you could study. And you talked to me about your money. That was your obligation," he yelled, approaching menacingly. "I didn't ask to be born." "No," I shouted back. "My obligation was to raise you until you were 18. Everything I did after that was out of love. But apparently, you don't understand what that word means." "You're the one who doesn't understand anything," Andrew bellowed. "You're a selfish, cheap old man who would rather die with his money than make his son happy. Get out of my house," I ordered. "Give me my money first. Get out." It was then that Andrew completely lost control. His eyes filled with rage, his hands clenched into fists, and for the first time in my life, I felt real fear of my own son. "You know what, Dad?" he said to me, his voice dripping with pure hatred. "You deserve to be hit for being such a selfish and cheap father." The first punch came so fast I couldn't dodge it. His closed fist hit me directly in the nose. I immediately felt the metallic taste of blood filling my mouth. The pain was indescribable, but the emotional betrayal hurt 1,000 times more. I fell backward. But Andrew didn't stop. His second punch caught me in the left eye, and the third in the ribs. Patricia was screaming, but not for him to stop. But for him to stop before someone called the police. As I fell to the floor of my own home, bleeding and gasping for air, the last thing I remember before losing consciousness were the words Andrew shouted at me. "The next time you tell me you don't have money, it will be much worse for you." Everything went black, but my mind, even in unconsciousness, was already planning the most calculated revenge of my life. I woke up in a white room that smelled of disinfectant and medicine. The sharp pain in my ribs immediately reminded me of what had happened. My left eye was swollen completely shut, and every breath felt like I had broken glass in my lungs. "Mr. Miller, please don't move suddenly." I heard a female voice beside me. A young nurse, probably Patricia's age, was checking monitors connected to my body. "Where? Where am I?" I murmured with difficulty. "You're at the Prince of Asturias University Hospital in our city," the nurse replied professionally. "Your neighbor, Betty Jimenez, found you unconscious in your building's hallway and called the ambulance. You've been here since last night. Betty, the same woman I had helped with $1,000, had saved my life." The irony was devastating. When I thought about the cruel words Andrew had said about her. "What are my injuries?" I asked, trying to sit up. But the pain stopped me. 3 fractured ribs, a severe contusion on your left eye, a minor fracture in your nasal septum, and multiple bruises on your torso, the nurse listed, writing something on a tablet. "Dr. Ramirez wants to talk to you when you feel better." As the nurse left the room, my mind began to process what had happened with terrifying clarity. Andrew had beaten me unconscious in my own home. My son, the person I had sacrificed everything for, had tried to kill me for money. But instead of feeling pain or sadness, something completely different began to grow inside me. A cold, calculating feeling that I had never experienced before, for the first time in my life. I was going to plan a meticulous revenge. About an hour later, a middle-aged doctor entered my room. His name tag read, "Dr. Fernando Ramirez. Traumatology." "Good morning, Mr. Miller." "I'm Dr. Ramirez," he said. "Reviewing my medical chart. Your injuries are consistent with a severe physical assault. The fractures in your ribs suggest kicks or blows with blunt objects." Can you tell me what happened? Here came my first moment of strategic acting. I decided to lie temporarily, to buy time and plan my revenge without interference. "Doctor, it was a domestic accident," I said with a weak voice. "I slipped in the bathroom and fell against the sink. and then against the floor. I'm old. My reflexes aren't what they used to be. The doctor looked at me with obvious skepticism. Mr. Miller, I've treated thousands of domestic accidents in my career. Your injuries are not consistent with a fall. The bruises on your ribs show specific patterns of direct impacts. Also, the nasal fracture indicates a direct frontal blow. Doctor, I assure you it was an accident, I insisted, maintaining my lie. I'm a clumsy man, especially when I take my arthritis medication. Dr. Ramirez didn't seem convinced, but he didn't press further. All right, Mr. Miller. However, I must inform you that per hospital protocol, any suspicious injury must be reported to the authorities. A social worker will come to speak with you tomorrow. Perfect. That would give me time to refine my strategy. That afternoon, while I was alone in my room, I began to plan every detail of my revenge. I knew Andrew would come to the hospital, probably faking concern, but really to make sure I kept quiet about what happened. I also knew I needed professional allies. During my years working at the textile factory, I had met Michael T. White, a labor lawyer who now had his own firm specializing in civil and criminal cases. Michael had helped me with some legal paperwork after Helen's death, and I had always found him to be an honest and cunning man. Using the room's phone, I called his office. White & Associates law firm. Good morning, a secretary answered. Good morning, this is Nathan Miller. I need to speak with Michael White urgently. It's a very delicate matter. One moment. Mr. Miller. Mr. White remembers you perfectly. I'm transferring the call. Nathan, how are you? It's been years. I heard Michael's familiar voice. Michael, I'm in the hospital. My own son assaulted me, and I need your professional help for a very complex case. There was a long silence before Michael responded. Nathan, this is very serious. Have you filed a police report? Not yet. I need to talk to you before making any legal decisions. But there are elements of this case that are going to surprise you. I'll be at the hospital in 2 hours, he replied. No hesitation. In the meantime, don't talk to anyone else about this. After hanging up, I focused on observing every detail of my situation. The nurses changed shifts every 8 hours. Doctors made rounds every 4 hours. Visitors could enter between 2 and 9 at night. I also began to practice my performance. When Andrew came, I needed to seem weaker and more vulnerable than I really was. I wanted him to feel secure, confident that he had intimidated me enough to keep me quiet. At 4 in the afternoon, just as I had predicted, Andrew appeared in my room. He came alone, without Patricia. His expression was a calculated mix of false concern and silent threat. Dad, how are you feeling? He asked, approaching my bed with cautious steps. Andrew, I murmured, faking more pain than I was in. My whole body hurts. I'm so sorry, Dad, he said, with a performance worthy of a professional actor. I lost control yesterday. I was so stressed about the wedding, about the money problems. But I never should have touched you, son, I whispered, activating the voice recorder on my cell phone, which I had hidden under the sheets. Why did you do this to me, Dad? Listen to me carefully, Andrew said, suddenly changing his tone to a more threatening one, but keeping his voice low. What happened yesterday was an accident. You fell in your house, understand? You slipped in the bathroom and hit the sink, but... Andrew, you hit me, I protested weakly. No, he hissed, leaning dangerously close to my face. I never touched you. You had a domestic accident. And that is going to be your story when the doctors, the police, or anyone else asks you. And if I don't, the mask of false concern disappeared completely. If you don't, Dad, what happened yesterday will look like child's play compared to what will happen to you. Patricia and I will disappear from your life forever. You will never meet your grandchildren. And believe me, I will find a way to make your life hell until the day you die. Andrew, please, I begged, maintaining my act. Besides, he continued with calculated cruelty, who is going to believe you? A 6'4" man accusing his own successful, respected son? Everyone will think you're senile or looking for attention. And the money for the wedding? That hasn't changed, he replied firmly. We still need that $20,000. And after yesterday, I think you've understood how important it is to us. Every word was perfectly recorded on my phone. Andrew was digging his own legal grave without even realizing it. Okay, son, I murmured, my voice breaking. I'll do what you ask. I'll say it was an accident. Perfect. He smiled, satisfied. I knew you'd come around. You're a good father, after all. After Andrew left, I waited exactly 30 minutes before calling Michael again. Michael, can you come now? I have recorded evidence that is going to completely change this case. I'm on my way immediately, he replied. While I waited for my lawyer, for the first time in decades, I felt completely in control of a situation. Andrew believed he had successfully intimidated me, but in reality, he had just handed me all the legal tools I needed to systematically destroy his life. The revenge I was planning would not be emotional or impulsive. It would be cold, meticulous, and absolutely devastating. And the best part was, Andrew himself had provided the evidence to do it. Helen, wherever she was going to see how her husband finally taught their ungrateful son the true meaning of consequences. Michael T. White arrived at the hospital at exactly 6:30 in the evening. He carried a black leather briefcase and a professional digital recorder. At 52, he still had the same penetrating gaze and upright posture that had made him one of the most respected lawyers in the city. Nathan, he said, carefully closing the door to the room, before I listen to any recording, I need you to tell me exactly what happened, without omitting any details. For the next 45 minutes, I told him the whole story from the beginning. The initial request for $20,000, the illegal investigation of my bank accounts, the psychological manipulation, the help I gave Betty, and finally, the brutal beating Andrew gave me. Michael took meticulous notes in a legal pad, stopping occasionally to ask specific questions about dates, potential witnesses, and available evidence. Nathan, he said, when I finished my story, what you're describing constitutes several serious crimes: physical assault with injury, threats, domestic violence, and possibly extortion. But before we proceed, I need to hear that recording you mentioned. I played the full conversation I had recorded during Andrew's visit. Michael listened in absolute silence, his expression growing more serious as the recording progressed. My God, he murmured when the playback finished. Nathan, your son just confessed to multiple crimes on a recording that is perfectly admissible as evidence in court. We have explicit threats, intimidation of a domestic violence victim, and an indirect admission of the assault. But that's not all, Michael, I said, pulling out a folder I had kept hidden. Over the years, I've kept all the documents of the sacrifices I made for Andrew. His college invoices, receipts for books, my own medical expenses that I postponed to pay for his studies. Even the receipt for the sale of Helen's wedding ring. Michael carefully reviewed each document. This is pure gold for the case. It shows the pattern of paternal sacrifice and the extreme ingratitude of the aggressor. But there's something else I need to know. Nathan, are you really in serious financial trouble? Here came the moment to reveal my most guarded secret. Michael, I need this to remain under absolute attorney-client privilege until we decide how to use it strategically. Of course, everything you tell me is protected by privilege. I have $200,000 in a savings account at a major national bank. It's the inheritance Helen left me when she died. But I never mentioned it to Andrew, because I wanted him to learn the value of effort and work. Michael was completely still for several seconds. Are you telling me you pretended to be poor for 20 years to educate your son? Exactly. I wanted Andrew to value what he had, to understand that money is earned with sweat and sacrifice. But apparently, I failed as a father and educator. Nathan, Michael said, with obvious admiration. You didn't fail. Your teaching strategy was brilliant. Andrew is the one who failed. By not learning the values you tried to teach him, how can we use this information? Michael began to pace the small room, clearly devising a legal strategy. We have several options, but I suggest a multi-phased approach. First, we need more evidence of the threats. And Andrew's pattern of aggressive behavior. What kind of evidence? Witnesses who have seen his behavior changes, records of his illegal investigation of your bank accounts, and if possible, more recordings of future threats. At that moment, I remembered a crucial detail. Michael, Betty Jimenez, my neighbor. She heard the entire argument before the assault. She lives in the apartment next to mine, and the walls are thin. She was also the one who called the ambulance. Perfect. We need her official testimony. What else? Kevin Reed, Patricia's brother who works at the bank. He admitted to investigating my bank activity. That is completely illegal under financial regulations. Michael smiled for the first time since he had arrived. Excellent. That gives us another line of legal attack. Violation of banking privacy. Misuse of confidential information. Possible professional misconduct if he used his position to obtain private data. And what do we do about the secret money? That will be our final trump card, Michael explained, organizing his notes. But we need to use it at the perfect moment, to maximize the psychological and legal impact. When would that be? When Andrew is completely legally compromised, when he has lied under oath about his motivations, and when he thinks he has won, then we will reveal that you always had the money he coveted, but that you chose not to give it to him, because his behavior proved he didn't deserve it. The strategy was brilliant, but there was one element that worried me. Michael, what if Andrew decides not to visit me again? What if he just disappears from my life? Nathan, based on the psychological profile you've described, Andrew will be back. Domestic abusers, especially when the victim is an older family member, always return to ensure they maintain control. Besides, he still believes he can get money from you, and if he comes with Patricia, or with more people, even better. More witnesses to his aggressive and threatening behavior. But we need to prepare the scene carefully. Michael took out his professional recorder and placed it on my nightstand. This recorder has 8 hours of capacity and forensic audio quality. Every time someone related to this case comes, you activate it discreetly. Is it legal to record without consent? In our state, recordings made by one party to the conversation are admissible as evidence, especially in cases of domestic violence or threats. You are documenting potential future crimes. When do we file the official complaint? Not yet, Michael responded emphatically. First, we need to build an absolutely solid case. We want that when we file the complaint. It will be impossible for Andrew to escape the consequences. What do I do in the meantime? You are going to continue pretending to be intimidated and willing to give in to his demands. But every conversation, every threat, every manipulation will be recorded. We are building a file that will not only protect you, but will ensure that Andrew faces the maximum possible legal consequences. Michael stood up and packed his documents. Nathan, one more question. After all this, after seeing your son's true nature, are you prepared for the emotional fallout of what we are about to do? Michael, I replied, with a determination I hadn't felt in years. The Andrew I raised and loved died yesterday, when he hit me in my own home. The person who came today to threaten me is a dangerous stranger who just happens to share my last name. Perfect. Then tomorrow I will begin the preliminary investigation. I will discreetly contact Betty Jimenez for her testimony, and I will investigate Kevin Reed's banking irregularities. And what do? You recover. You act like the intimidated victim Andrew thinks you are, and you document every future contact. When we have enough evidence, we will proceed with a lawsuit. It will include criminal charges for assault, threats, domestic violence, and a civil case for damages that is going to cost your son a lot more than the $20,000 he wanted so badly. After Michael left, I was alone in the hospital room, but for the first time in weeks, I felt completely calm. I was no longer the helpless victim of an abusive son. I was now the architect of a legal revenge that would be as meticulous as it was devastating. That night, as I looked out the window at the lights of the city, I remembered the words Helen used to say to me when Andrew was little and misbehaved. Nathan, sometimes, true love requires harsh consequences. I had finally understood, completely, what my wife meant. The next morning, Michael called me with news that exceeded my most optimistic expectations. His voice sounded excited and professionally satisfied. Nathan, the preliminary investigation has revealed information that is going to completely change this case. He told me. Without preamble, can you speak freely now? Yes. I'm alone in the room. What did you discover? First, I interviewed Betty Jimenez this morning. She not only confirms hearing the entire argument before the assault, but she also has very specific details about the threats Andrew shouted at you while you were on the floor. What kind of details? According to Betty, after you lost consciousness, Andrew yelled something at Patricia like, "The next time he refuses to give me my money, I'll break more than just his ribs." She also heard Patricia telling him to calm down because the neighbors might call the police. The information was devastating for Andrew. I had an independent witness who had seen threats after the assault. But that's not all, Michael continued. I contacted a friend of mine who works in the compliance department at Bank of America. I explained the situation confidentially. And he confirmed that Kevin Reed did indeed access confidential information from your account without legal authorization. That has consequences for him. Serious consequences. Violation of the Data Protection Act, misuse of confidential banking information, and possible professional misconduct. Kevin Reed could face anything from administrative sanctions to criminal charges, in addition to the immediate loss of his job. And what do we do with that information? We are saving it as additional ammunition. When we confront Andrew and Patricia with the evidence, we will also include the legal consequences Kevin is facing. That will pressure Patricia to reconsider her loyalty to her fiancé. While I was talking to Michael, a nurse came in to inform me that I would be discharged the next day. But I would have to return for weekly checkups for the next month. Perfect, Michael told me. When I told him about the discharge, I need you to go home and act normally. Andrew is going to come by to verify that you are sticking to your story about the domestic accident. What do I do when he comes? Continue to act like the intimidated victim, but keep the recorder activated at all times. We need more evidence of his pattern of threatening behavior. That afternoon, just as we had predicted, Andrew appeared in my hospital room. This time he was accompanied by Patricia, and they both brought flowers and a box of chocolates, obviously to create the appearance of concerned family members in front of the medical staff. "Dad, we're so happy to hear you're being discharged tomorrow," Andrew exclaimed. "With a performance worthy of a movie award. We were so worried about your accident." I discreetly activated the professional recorder Michael had left. "Yes, son, it was a very foolish fall. You know how clumsy I am. Nathan?" Patricia intervened with false sweetness. "Andrew and I have been talking about what happened before your accident. We realize we were very hard on you about the money for the wedding." "Oh, yes?" I asked, faking hopeful surprise. "Yes, Dad," Andrew continued. "We understand your financial situation is complicated, so we've decided to lower our expectations." "What do you mean?" Patricia spoke up. "We've recalculated the wedding expenses. We can have a more modest celebration with just $15,000 instead of $20,000. The $5,000 reduction sounded generous on the surface, but it was still an amount they believed I couldn't easily afford. "Son, that's still a very high amount for me," I told them, maintaining my act. Andrew got closer to my bed and lowered his voice, but not low enough to prevent the recorder from capturing every word. "Dad, listen to me. After what happened the other day, I think we both understand the situation. I need that money by September. It's not $20,000. It's $15,000. That's my final offer. And if I can't get it?" I asked, trembling. "Dad," Patricia told me, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "I'm sure you can find a way. Maybe by selling some things from the house, or asking for a loan using the property as collateral. You could even," Andrew added, "sell some of Mom's jewelry that you have stored away. I'm sure it's worth several $1,000s. The mention of Helen's jewelry provoked a genuine anger in me that I had to control carefully. How dare he suggest I sell the only tangible memories I had of my wife? "Andrew, your mother's jewelry has immeasurable sentimental value," I protested weakly. "Dad," he replied coldly, "Mom doesn't need them anymore. But I need this money to build my future with Patricia. Besides," Patricia added, "I'm sure your wife would have wanted you to make any sacrifice for your son's happiness." The emotional manipulation was disgusting, but perfect for my legal purposes. Every word was recorded as evidence of emotional blackmail and psychological manipulation. "All right," I murmured, my voice breaking. "I'll see what I can do." "Perfect," Andrew smiled, satisfied. "But Dad, I need you to understand something very important. The deadline to confirm the venue is May 15th. That gives us exactly 3 weeks. And if I don't have it by then..." Andrew's expression hardened immediately. "Dad, I'd rather not think about that possibility. After your accident, I think we both know how clumsy you can be when you get nervous or stressed." The threat was crystal clear. "If I didn't get the money, I could have another accident." "Andrew is right," Patricia added. "Domestic accidents are very common in older people, especially when they are under a lot of pressure." After they left, I immediately called Michael to inform him about the new recording. "Nathan, this is pure gold," he told me. "After listening to the full playback, we have veiled but clear threats: emotional blackmail, psychological manipulation, and now a specific deadline that we can use strategically." "How?" "We are going to use these 3 weeks to build an absolutely solid case. While they think you are desperately looking for $15,000, we will be preparing a legal trap that will completely destroy their lives." "What kind of trap?" "I'm going to contact a private investigator to discreetly document Andrew and Patricia's lifestyle. I want to know exactly what they spend their money on, if they have hidden debts, and what their real financial situation is." "Why is that important?" "Because I suspect the urgency for wedding money isn't the only reason. There's something else they're hiding, and when we find it, we will have even more ammunition against them." That night, as I prepared to go home the next day, I reflected on how far this situation had come. In less than a week, I had gone from being a father trying to teach his son the value of money, to being the victim of a physical assault, and finally, to becoming the architect of a meticulously planned legal revenge. But the most revealing thing was, I no longer felt emotional pain for the loss of my relationship with Andrew. The person who had hit me and threatened me was not my son. He was a dangerous stranger who shared my DNA, but who had lost all right to my fatherly love. The next day, when I returned to my home, I noticed that someone had cleaned the bloodstains from the living room floor. It was probably Betty, trying to erase the evidence of the trauma she had witnessed. But the real evidence, the recordings, the testimonies, and the legal strategy we were building, those remained intact and were growing every day. Andrew thought he had me completely under control. He didn't know that every threat, every manipulation, every cruel word was being meticulously documented. For the trial that would change our lives forever, the countdown to his destruction had begun, and he himself was providing all the tools to make it possible. A week after I returned home, Michael summoned me to his office with news that exceeded all my expectations. The private investigator he had hired, a former police officer named Robert Castle, had discovered information that would completely transform our case. "Nathan, sit down, because what I'm about to tell you will change everything we thought we knew about Andrew and Patricia," Michael said, organizing a series of photographs and documents on his desk. What did they discover? Andrew has a secret online gambling addiction that he has been hiding not only from you, but also from Patricia. He started showing me some bank statements. In the last 8 months, he has lost approximately $17,000 on sports betting sites and virtual poker. The revelation left me completely stunned. $17,000? Where did he get that money? That's the most worrying part, Michael continued. He took out 3 different personal loans using fake income documents. He claimed to earn triple what he actually makes at his job. That means Andrew doesn't need $15,000 for a lavish wedding. He needs it desperately to pay off gambling debts that are suffocating him financially. The threats from the lenders have begun, and he is in a truly dangerous situation. Robert Castle, the investigator, intervened, showing me a series of photographs. "Mr. Miller, these images were taken last week. Your son regularly meets with 2 men that our police contacts identified as loan sharks, debt collectors for illegal loans. The photographs showed Andrew in tense conversations with threatening-looking individuals in a mall parking lot. His body language betrayed fear and desperation. Does Patricia know any of this?" I asked. Absolutely nothing, Michael replied. According to our investigation, Patricia genuinely believes Andrew's financial problems are solely due to wedding expenses. He has been systematically lying to her for months. What else did you discover? Robert Castle consulted his notes. Patricia has been bragging at work about the expensive wedding they're going to have. She has told her fellow nurses that the groom's father is paying for everything, and that she is going to have the most elegant celebration at the hospital. The irony was devastating. Patricia was building her social reputation on a lie Andrew had created, while he actually needed the money to save his life from loan sharks. But there's more, Michael added, with a smile that promised even more shocking revelations. Kevin Reed, Patricia's brother who violated your banking confidentiality, also has serious problems. What kind of problems? Our contact at the bank confirmed that Kevin has been under internal investigation for 3 months for irregularities in handling confidential client information. Your case is not the only one. There are at least 5 similar complaints. What does that mean for him? It means he is going to be fired immediately, when the bank completes its investigation, probably within the next 2 weeks. In addition, he will face criminal charges for systematic violation of banking privacy. The web of lies and illegal behavior was much more extensive than I had imagined. Not only was Andrew guilty of assault and threats, but he had also dragged his future in-laws into criminal activities. Michael, how do we use all this information strategically? We are going to set a perfect trap, he explained, organizing the documents in chronological order. When the May 15th deadline they set arrives, you are going to call Andrew and Patricia for a meeting at your house. What kind of meeting? You are going to tell them you have the money, but that you want to talk about the terms of the loan. During that conversation, we are going to confront them with all the evidence we have collected. Robert Castle added, we will have hidden cameras recording the entire confrontation, and I will be monitoring from Betty's apartment to ensure your physical safety. And after, Michael smiled. We are going to simultaneously file a criminal complaint for assault, threats, and extortion, a civil lawsuit for damages, and we are going to hand over all the information about Kevin's banking irregularities to the proper authorities. But I want something more, I told them, with a determination that surprised me. I want Patricia to know exactly what kind of man Andrew is, before it's too late for her. Are you sure? Michael asked. Patricia actively participated in the threats and psychological manipulation against you. Yes, but she did it based on Andrew's lies. She believes I'm being selfish with money I don't really have. She doesn't know that Andrew is a gambling addict who is using her to pay off dangerous debts. Robert Castle nodded. Mr. Miller is right. Patricia is also a victim of Andrew's manipulations. She deserves to know the truth before she marries him. Perfect, Michael concluded. Then we will modify the strategy. During the confrontation on May 15th, we will gradually reveal all of Andrew's lies in front of Patricia. First, the gambling debts. Then, the threats against you. And finally, I continued, I will reveal to them that I always had the money they needed, but I decided not to give it to them, because their behavior proved they didn't deserve it. The following days were a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation. Andrew called me every 2 days to check on my progress in getting the money, and each conversation was more threatening than the last. Dad, I hope you're taking the deadline seriously, he told me during one of those calls. Patricia is already nervous because we haven't confirmed the venue, and I'm starting to lose patience with you. Son, I'm doing everything I can, I would reply, maintaining my act of a desperate father, but getting $15,000 isn't easy at my age. Dad, don't make me remind you what happened last time you told me something was difficult, he threatened, with a coldness that chilled my blood. Every threat was perfectly recorded on the recorders Michael had installed on my phone and in my house. The Tuesday before the deadline, Betty visited me to thank me again for the help with her granddaughter. During the conversation, she revealed a detail that would add even more drama to the final confrontation. Mr. Miller, I don't know if I should tell you this, but on Monday I saw your son Andrew talking to some very rough-looking men in the building lobby. She told me, clearly concerned. What kind of conversation? I couldn't hear everything, but one of those men told him something like, You have until Friday to bring the full amount, or the consequences will be permanent. Your son looked terrified. Mr. Miller, the information confirmed our suspicions. The loan sharks were pressuring Andrew with serious threats, and he was transferring that pressure to me through violence and emotional blackmail. Betty, would you be willing to testify about what you saw and heard? Of course, Mr. Miller, after how you helped me with Lucy. I would do anything for you. That night, as I mentally reviewed all the elements of our strategy, I realized we had built an absolutely devastating legal case. I had recordings of direct threats, testimonies from independent witnesses, evidence of bank fraud, documentation of a gambling addiction, and proof of systematic psychological manipulation. But more importantly, I had the trump card that would change everything. The $200,000 I had kept secret for 20 years, waiting for the perfect moment to use it as a life lesson. The moment had arrived. In 3 days, Andrew would discover that he had destroyed his relationship with his father, his future marriage, his professional career, and his freedom, all for money that had always been available, if he had only proven he deserved it. Justice, sometimes, has a sense of drama so perfect, it seems like fiction. May 15th arrived with a persistent rain that seemed to foreshadow the storm about to break in my house. At 6 p.m., as we had agreed, Andrew and Patricia knocked on my door, with a punctuality that betrayed their desperation. "Dad, we hope you have good news for us," Andrew said, shaking raindrops from his coat. His smile was tense, and I could see the deep dark circles under his eyes, betraying sleepless nights. Come in," I told them, with apparent nervousness. "We have a lot to talk about." Robert Castle was hidden in Betty's apartment with monitoring equipment. Michael was waiting for my call from his office, and I had 3 professional recorders activated strategically throughout the house. "Nathan, we've been very worried," Patricia began, settling onto the sofa. "The deadline to confirm the venue is today, and we need to transfer the money before 9 p.m. Calm down, I told them, faking a calm I didn't feel. I got the money. But I need to talk to you about some conditions." Andrew's eyes lit up immediately. "You got the $15,000? Where did you get it?" "Well, son, I had to make some financial arrangements. I took out a mortgage loan, using the house as collateral." "Perfect," Patricia exclaimed, clapping. "We knew you'd find a way. Fathers always find a way to help their children. But there are conditions," I continued. "Preparing for the first phase of the confrontation, the bank requires complete documentation on what the money will be used for. I need you to explain all the wedding expenses to me in detail." Andrew and Patricia exchanged a nervous glance. "What kind of documentation?" Andrew asked. "Invoices for the hall, catering quotes, contracts with vendors. Everything must be justified, because if I don't pay the loan back on time, I could lose the house." "Dad, why are you making things so complicated?" Andrew protested, with growing irritation. "We told you we needed $15,000 for the wedding. Don't you trust your own son?" "Of course I trust you, Andrew. But after what happened a few weeks ago, after my accident, I'm a little nervous about money issues." Patricia leaned forward. "Nathan, we understand your caution, but we really need that money today. The venue is already reserved. We've paid deposits to several vendors." "What vendors?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Could you show me the receipts?" "Receipts?" Andrew stammered. "Dad, we don't carry receipts around with us. It's just that, you see." I continued my act. "The bank also asked for information about the groom's financial situation. They had to do a basic credit check." The silence that followed was telling. Andrew turned visibly pale, and Patricia looked at him with growing confusion. "Credit check?" Patricia asked. "Why do they need that?" "Well, Patricia," I explained, "when a retiree applies for such a large loan, the bank investigates if there's a risk that the final beneficiary could assume the debt in case of problems." "What do you mean by that?" Andrew asked, his voice trembling. "Andrew, the bank discovered some irregularities in your credit history." Patricia turned to her fiancé. "Irregularities? What is your father talking about?" It was the perfect moment to begin the gradual reveal. "Patricia, did you know Andrew has 3 active personal loans, totaling $17,000? What? Patricia shouted, jumping up from the sofa. Andrew, what is your father talking about? Dad, I don't know what you're talking about, Andrew lied. Desperately. That's confidential information the bank can't disclose. You're right, son. The bank didn't tell me. But a private investigator did. I pulled out the folders Michael had prepared and placed them on the coffee table. Patricia, here are bank statements, online betting records, and photographs of Andrew meeting with loan sharks. Patricia took the documents with trembling hands. As she read, her expression changed from confusion to disbelief and finally to absolute fury. $17,000 on sports betting. She read aloud. Online poker? Andrew, what the hell is this? Patricia, let me explain, Andrew began, but she cut him off violently. No, don't explain anything. You've been lying to me for months. You told me we needed money for the wedding, but you really need money to pay gambling debts, Patricia. Please, calm down, Andrew pleaded. Calm down, Andrew? You've put our future at risk. For an addiction you hid from me. It was then I decided to add more fuel to the fire. Patricia, there's something else you need to know. The men Andrew is meeting with are not legal lenders. They are illegal loan sharks, who have threatened permanent consequences if he doesn't pay by Friday. Permanent consequences? Patricia whispered, in horror. Andrew, are you in physical danger because of these debts? Andrew could no longer maintain his lies. Patricia, yes, I have some problems with gambling, but this will all be fixed when my father gives us the money for the wedding. The wedding! Patricia screamed, out of her mind. There is no wedding. Andrew, I am not marrying a lying, gambling addict, who has been deceiving me for months. Patricia, please, don't do this. We can fix this together. Together? You didn't trust me enough to tell me about your problems, but you trusted me enough to manipulate your father and get money. Andrew turned to me in desperation. Dad, give them the money. You can see Patricia is going to leave me if I don't fix this now. Oh, now you need me? I asked him, with a calm that contrasted with the emotional chaos in the room. After beating me unconscious, after threatening me repeatedly, after calling me selfish and cheap. Dad, please, Andrew begged, falling to his knees. I'm sorry for everything. I was desperate. The loan sharks are going to kill me if I don't pay. Patricia, who had been watching this pathetic plea, turned to me. Nathan, your son hit you? Physically? Patricia, didn't he tell you about my domestic accident? I took out my phone and played one of the recordings, where Andrew clearly admitted the threats and the assault. Patricia's voice trembled as she listened. My God, Andrew, did you really hit your father? Patricia, he refused to help me. I was desperate. There is no excuse for hitting your father, Patricia roared. How could you do that to the man who raised you alone after your mother died? It was then that I decided to reveal my final trump card. Patricia, there is something else you both need to know. I got up and walked to my desk, where I took out the bank statements from my secret account. What is that, Nathan? Patricia asked. Patricia, these are the statements from a savings account I've maintained for 20 years, an inheritance from my wife Helen that I never mentioned to Andrew. I showed them the document. In this account, there are exactly $200,000. The silence was deafening. Patricia took the paper in disbelief, while Andrew was completely paralyzed. $200,000? Patricia whispered. Nathan, you had this money the whole time? Always. For 20 years. I pretended to have financial difficulties, to teach Andrew the value of work and effort. I wanted him to learn that money is earned, not demanded. You had $200,000? Andrew exploded, getting to his feet. And you let me beg? You let me get desperate? You let me get to the point of hitting you? Andrew, I replied, with a calm that surprised me. You chose to hit me. You chose to threaten me. You chose to call me selfish and cheap. I just tested your character, and you failed miserably. Patricia stood up from the sofa. Andrew, this is over. I am not marrying you. I cannot be with someone who lies to his father, who hits him, and who lies to me. Patricia! No! Andrew cried. Dad, give her the money. You can fix this. Give her $15,000 and Patricia will stay with me. No, Andrew, I told him firmly. I am not giving you 1 cent. And tomorrow morning, all these documents, recordings, and evidence will be given to the police and the court. Andrew's expression changed from pleading to homicidal rage. You're going to report me? Your own son? I am going to report an abuser, who happens to be my biological son, but who lost all right to call himself my family. That was the last straw for Andrew. The fury that erupted in Andrew's eyes was more intense than anything I had ever seen. His hands clenched into fists. His breathing quickened. And for a moment, I thought he was going to hit me again, this time in front of Patricia. You damn son of a bitch, he roared, advancing toward me. You ruined my life over a stupid psychological experiment, but Patricia got between us. Andrew, don't you dare touch him. Get out of the way. Patricia, this manipulative bastard deserves to have every bone in his body broken if you take one more step toward your father. I will call the police myself. Patricia shouted, with a determination she hadn't shown before. Now you're defending him? Andrew bellowed. In disbelief, he tricked us both. He had the money the whole time, and made us go through this. Yes, Andrew, he had the money, but you hit him. You threatened him. You lied to me about your gambling debts. Patricia turned to me, tears in her eyes. Nathan, although I don't agree with your methods, I understand why you did what you did. But Andrew chose violence. Just then, my cell phone rang. It was Michael, who had been listening to the entire conversation through the monitoring system we had installed. Nathan, are you okay? Robert says the aggression levels are escalating dangerously. I'm fine, Michael. Everything is going according to plan. Who is Michael? Andrew asked, with growing paranoia. My lawyer, I replied calmly. The same one who, tomorrow, will file the criminal complaint for assault, threats, extortion, and domestic violence. You can't do this to me, Andrew shouted. I am your son, your own flesh and blood. My flesh and blood doesn't threaten his father. My flesh and blood doesn't beat the man who raised him alone for 20 years. Patricia, who had been watching this exchange with fascination and horror, did something completely unexpected. She took off her engagement ring and threw it at Andrew's feet. It's over. Andrew, I am not marrying you. I cannot be with someone capable of hitting his own father. Patricia! No! Andrew begged, falling to his knees to pick up the ring. We can fix this! Dad, tell her we can fix this. No! Andrew! I told him, with a firmness that had taken 64 years to develop. Some things can't be fixed. Some lines. Once crossed, there's no coming back. Patricia walked to the door. Nathan, I am so sorry for everything that has happened. You didn't deserve to be treated like this. Regardless of your teaching methods. Patricia, wait. I stopped her. There's one more thing you need to know before you go. She paused in the doorway. What? Your brother Kevin is going to be fired from the bank next week. The internal investigations confirmed he violated the banking confidentiality of multiple clients, including me. Patricia's face fell. Kevin is going to lose his job over this, and he will face criminal charges. Violating banking privacy is a serious crime. Patricia turned to Andrew with pure hatred. Do you know what you've done? You involved my brother in your lies. Kevin has 2 small children and a mortgage. You've destroyed my family. 2. Patricia, I didn't know. Andrew started. You didn't know anything, because you only think about yourself, she shouted. You are a selfish, lying coward who hits old people. Patricia left my house, slamming the door with a violence that shook the frames. Andrew and I were left alone. He was kneeling on the floor, holding an engagement ring that no longer meant anything. Dad, he whispered, his voice broken. Can you forgive me? Can we forget all this and start over? Andrew, I replied, sitting down across from him. For 20 years, I gave you unconditional love. I sacrificed my health, my comfort, my dreams. I sold your mother's memories to pay for your college. I know, Dad, and I'm grateful. Grateful, I interrupted him. Do you think gratitude is shown with punches? Do you think love is earned with threats? I was desperate. No, Andrew. You weren't desperate. You were furious, because you couldn't control me. You were furious because I didn't immediately give in to your demands. I got up and walked to the window, overlooking the park where we had played so many times when he was a child. Do you know what the saddest part of all this is? What? Dad. That if you had come to me honestly, if you had confessed your gambling addiction, if you had asked me for help instead of demanding money, I would have given you not only the $15,000, but the professional treatment you need to overcome your addiction. Andrew stood up slowly. Can you still do that? Can we still fix this? No. Son, you lost that chance. When you decided violence was an acceptable tool to get what you wanted. Dad, please. Andrew, tomorrow morning, Michael will file the complaint. You are going to be arrested for assault, threats, and domestic violence against a senior. The recordings I have guarantee you will be convicted. And then what? You're going to let me rot in jail? You are going to face the consequences of your decisions, as you should. Andrew walked to the door, but before leaving, he turned back one last time. Dad, what about the loan sharks? If I don't pay them, they're going to do what they have to do. I replied coldly. You created that situation. You solve it. But they could kill me. Andrew, 3 weeks ago you begged me for money, claiming it was for your happiness. Then you hit me when I didn't give in to your demands. Now you're asking me to save you from the consequences of your addiction. At what point do you take responsibility for your own life? I'm your son. No, I said, with a calm that surprised me. My son died the day he hit me in this very room. You are a stranger who shares my last name. Andrew left my house that night, knowing that his life as he knew it was over. No fiancé, no wedding, no money, no family, and with multiple legal proceedings waiting for him. But I, for the first time in months, felt completely at peace. I had learned that fatherly love has limits, and that some betrayals are unforgivable. The rain had stopped, and through my window I could see the first stars of the night. Helen, wherever she was, could finally rest, knowing her husband had found the strength to set definitive boundaries. The next day, a new stage of my life would begin, a stage without Andrew, but also without the burden of carrying someone who had proven to be unworthy of my love and sacrifice. Sometimes, freedom comes disguised as loss. May 16th dawned with a clear sky, a dramatic contrast to the legal storm that was about to break over Andrew. At 9 a.m., Michael and I presented ourselves at the city police station, with a folder of evidence that was over 200 pages long. Nathan, before we go in, I want you to know this process is going to be emotionally very difficult, Michael warned me. As we walked to the main entrance, seeing your son arrested and processed won't be easy. Regardless of what he's done, Michael, I made this decision after much reflection. Andrew needs to learn that actions have consequences, especially when those actions include violence against an elderly family member. Detective Linda Reynolds, a woman about 40 years old, with 20 years of experience in domestic violence cases, received us in her office. Her expression grew more serious as she reviewed our evidence. Mr. Miller, in my 2 decades working these cases, I have rarely seen such complete documentation, she commented, examining the recordings, photographs, and testimonies. The threats are clearly recorded, the physical assault is medically documented, and the witness testimonies are consistent. Detective, what is the procedure? Michael asked. We are issuing an immediate arrest warrant for assault with injury, grave threats, domestic violence, and extortion. Based on the severity of the evidence, I will request he be denied bail. Why no bail? I asked. Mr. Miller, your son demonstrated an escalating pattern of violence. The recordings show explicit threats to repeat the assault if you did not meet his demands. That makes him a danger to your safety. 3 hours later, we received the call we had been waiting for. Andrew had been arrested at his office, in front of all his colleagues. The impact on his professional reputation was immediate and devastating. Mr. Miller, Detective Reynolds informed me by phone. Your son has requested to speak with you. He says he has important information that could change the case. What kind of information? He prefers not to say until he speaks with you directly. Are you willing to visit him in the holding cell? Michael advised me to accept. Nathan, anything he says during that conversation can be used as additional evidence. Besides, I want to see how he reacts when he faces the real consequences of his actions. An hour later, I found myself in front of Andrew, in a visiting room at the station. He was sitting behind a metal table, in handcuffs, wearing the orange jumpsuit of a detainee. His eyes were red. He had clearly been crying. "Dad," he said, his voice broken. "Thank you for coming." "Andrew, the detective says you have important information." "What is it, Dad?" "I want to confess everything. I want to admit to everything I did and accept the consequences. But I need to ask you for something." "What?" "The loan sharks came to my apartment last night. They destroyed my furniture and told me I have until Sunday to get the full amount, or they will find me when I get out of here." "And what do you want me to do?" "Dad, I know I don't deserve anything from you after what I did, but could you pay my gambling debts? Not for me, but so they don't kill me when I get out of jail." The request was so absurd. It almost made me laugh. "Andrew, are you really asking me to use my money to save you from the consequences of your own bad decisions?" "Dad, I know. It's a lot to ask after I hit you. But it's $17,000. For you, it's money you won't even miss." "Andrew, do you hear what you're saying? You hit me, you threatened me, you tried to manipulate me psychologically, you destroyed your relationship with Patricia, you ruined Kevin's career. And now you're asking me to rescue you from a situation you created, but they are going to kill me. Dad, Andrew, for 20 years. I taught you that decisions have consequences, apparently. You never learned that lesson. So you're just going to let them kill me. I am going to let you face the consequences. Of betting money you didn't have, of taking out illegal loans, and of choosing violence as a method of conflict resolution." Andrew slumped in his chair. "Dad, can you at least forgive me? Can you tell me you still love me, even if you won't help me?" His question took me by surprise. For weeks, I had been so focused on the legal revenge that I hadn't fully processed the emotional side of the situation. "Andrew," I said, after a long pause, "for 64 years, love has been the motivating force of all my decisions. I loved your mother until her last breath. I loved you from the moment you were born. And now I have learned that true love sometimes requires harsh consequences. I love you enough not to rescue you from a situation you created. Does that mean you forgive me? It means I understand you were a desperate young man who made terrible decisions. But understanding is not the same as forgiving, and forgiving is not the same as rescuing. Can we ever have a normal relationship again?" "Andrew, you beat your 64-year-old father unconscious because he wouldn't give you money. That action created an irreparable fracture in our relationship. So we'll never be father and son again? Biologically, we will always be father and son. Emotionally, that relationship died the day you chose violence. When I left the station that afternoon, Michael informed me about additional developments. "Nathan, the investigation has expanded more than we expected," he said, reviewing documents in his car. "The police discovered that the lenders Andrew got involved with are part of a loan shark ring. That has been under investigation for months." "What does that mean for the case?" "It means Andrew can become a protected witness. If he cooperates with the investigation against the illegal loan ring, that could significantly reduce his sentence. And if he doesn't cooperate, he will face the full sentence. Between 3 and 5 years in prison for aggravated assault on a senior, plus fines, and a permanent restraining order." That night, while I ate dinner alone in my home, I reflected on the extraordinary events of the last few weeks. I had gone from being a victim of domestic violence to being the architect of a legal revenge that had completely destroyed my son's life. But for the first time in months, I felt no guilt or remorse. I felt a deep peace. That came from knowing I had set definitive boundaries against unacceptable behavior. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Patricia. Nathan, can I talk to you? There's something important I need to tell you. About Andrew. And about me. Of course. Patricia. What is it? I'd rather talk in person. Can I visit you tomorrow afternoon? Sure. Is everything all right? Let's just say, I've discovered things about Andrew that go far beyond the gambling debts. Things that will significantly impact the legal case. After hanging up, I stared out the window at the nightlights of my neighborhood. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, but tonight I felt completely calm, knowing I had made the right decisions. Sometimes justice arrives slowly, but when it does, it is absolutely relentless. Patricia arrived at my house the next day, at exactly 4 in the afternoon, but she was accompanied by an older woman I didn't immediately recognize. Her expression was serious, and she carried a folder similar to the ones Michael used for important legal documents. Nathan, I'd like you to meet my mother, Linda Reed, Patricia told me as they entered. She wanted to meet you personally after everything that has happened. Linda Reed was a woman about my age, with perfectly gray hair, and a look that denoted decades of facing difficulties. Her presence commanded immediate respect. Mr. Miller, Linda said, extending her hand. I am so sorry for what my for what my family put you through, but after what Patricia told me yesterday, I needed to come personally to apologize, and to inform you of something that will completely change this case. What is it? I asked, offering them a seat in the living room. Patricia opened her folder and took out a series of documents. Nathan, after our confrontation the other day, I decided to investigate everything related to Andrew on my own. What I discovered is much worse than any of us imagined. Worse in what way? Andrew doesn't just have gambling debts. He has also been systematically scamming the elderly for the last 8 months. The revelation left me completely stunned. Scamming the elderly? How? Linda Reed spoke up. Mr. Miller, my son Kevin, before he was fired from the bank, confessed something terrible to me. Andrew asked him for bank information, not just on you, but on other elderly clients with large savings accounts. For what purpose? Andrew contacted these seniors, posing as a financial advisor, Patricia continued, showing me printed documents. He told them their bank accounts had been compromised, and that they needed to transfer their money temporarily to a safe account that he managed. My God, I murmured, reviewing the evidence. How many people did he scam so far? We have identified 7 victims, Linda replied. The total amount stolen exceeds $40,000. How did you discover this? Patricia explained. After I broke off our engagement, I contacted some of the victims, who appeared in the bank documents you showed us. An 82-year-old woman, Mrs. Hope, told me that a very polite young man had called her, claiming to be an advisor from the bank, and that she needed to transfer $5,000 to protect her savings from hackers. And she believed him? Not only did she believe him, Linda added, with indignation, but Andrew personally went to her house to help her with the transfer. He exploited the trust of an elderly widow to steal her life savings. The magnitude of the betrayal completely overwhelmed me. Not only had I raised a son capable of hitting his own father, but also a predator who systematically preyed on vulnerable people. Why are you telling me this? I asked them. Because we want you to know that you are not Andrew's only victim, Patricia replied. And because we believe you deserve to know the complete truth about the man you raised. Besides, Linda added, all of these victims are going to testify at the trial. Andrew won't just face charges for assault, but also for multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse of the elderly. Linda handed me another document. Mr. Miller, the 7 victims have decided to file a joint lawsuit against Andrew. The total sentence could exceed 10 years in prison. 10 years? I repeated, in disbelief. At least, Patricia confirmed. And that's not counting the financial restitution he will have to pay to all his victims. At that moment, the phone rang. It was Michael, with news that would perfectly complement the revelations I had just received. Nathan, can you speak freely? Yes, I'm with Patricia and her mother. They just brought me very important information about additional cases of fraud. Perfect, because I have related news. The police intercepted communications between Andrew and the illegal loan ring. Apparently, he promised to pay his debts with money he would get from his rich father and other stupid old people. That's recorded? Completely documented. Andrew not only admitted his plans to extort you, but he also described in detail his methods for scamming other seniors. Patricia and Linda exchanged looks of astonishment as they listened to my phone conversation. Michael, what does this mean for the case? It means Andrew is going to face federal charges for organized fraud against the elderly. The district attorney is considering classifying it as racketeering, due to the systematic pattern of his scams. After hanging up, I sat in silence for several minutes, processing the magnitude of what I had discovered. The son I had raised with so much love and sacrifice was not just a domestic abuser, but a predator who specialized in victimizing the elderly. Mr. Miller, Linda said gently, I know this must be devastating for you, but there's one more thing you need to know. What else could there be? Patricia and I have been talking to the other victims. They all agree on one thing. Andrew constantly mentioned to them that he had learned about financial responsibility from his father, who was a very hard-working and honest man. What do you mean? He used your reputation and the values you taught him as a manipulation tool, Patricia explained. He told his victims he came from an honorable family, that his father had taught him to help older people with their finances. The irony was brutal. Andrew had twisted every lesson of honesty and integrity I had tried to teach him, turning them into weapons to victimize the most vulnerable. Patricia, I said, why did you decide to help me with this? You could have just walked away from this whole situation. Because you didn't deserve any of what Andrew did to you, she replied with determination, and because the other victims deserve justice. Too, Linda added, Mr. Miller, my son Kevin made a serious mistake by violating banking confidentiality, but he did it while being manipulated by Andrew. When we discovered the full truth about the scams, we understood that Kevin had also been a victim of manipulation. 3 weeks later, I found myself in the courtroom, surrounded by the 7 other victims and their families. The case had attracted media attention, due to the systematic nature of the scams and the assault against an elderly family member. Andrew entered the room in handcuffs, wearing a suit he had probably bought with stolen money. His appearance had changed dramatically. He had lost weight, he had deep dark circles, and his hair was completely unkempt. When our eyes met, I saw something I hadn't seen before in his eyes. Genuine remorse. But it was far too late. The judge, the Honorable Fernando Sanchez, read the charges. Aggravated assault on a senior, grave threats, domestic violence, multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and association with an illegal loan ring. The sentence was devastating. 8 years in prison. Full restitution of all stolen funds plus interest. A permanent restraining order from all victims. And a ban on managing bank accounts for 10 years after his release. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before being taken to prison, Andrew turned to me. Dad, I am so sorry for everything I did. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that the values you taught me were right. I twisted them because of my own selfishness and cowardice. I did not respond. Some apologies come far too late. 6 months later, as I organized the documents to donate my $200,000 to the National Foundation for Elderly Protection, I reflected on everything I had learned. I had raised a son with unconditional love, but without firm boundaries. I had confused protection with permissiveness, and affection with a lack of consequences. But I had also learned that it is never too late to set boundaries, to demand respect, and to protect not only my own dignity, but that of other vulnerable people like me. Helen, wherever she was, could finally rest, knowing her husband had found the strength to do the right thing, even if it was the hardest thing he had ever done in his life. Sometimes, true love requires decisions that seem cruel, but are necessary, and sometimes the greatest lesson a father can give his son is to allow him to face the full consequences of his actions. Andrew would learn that lesson over the next 8 years. I had already learned that my value as a person did not depend on rescuing someone who had chosen to be my abuser. The story ends here, but the lesson will continue forever. If you liked this story, support us with a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your opinions in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box that appears on the left. Thank you for joining us.